Today we're going to look at graphing using key features of the rational function. So we're going to start by reviewing the long division. Here's the question. We're going to rewrite x over x minus 6, and then we're going to graph and talk about the transformations. So we start with setting up the equation, and then we are going to say x times what gives us x. That's going to be 1. Then we take 1 and we multiply it by each term. So we get x minus 6, and then we subtract. We're going to add in that 0, so we end up getting positive 6. Then remember, with our remainder, we take that remainder and we put it over the x minus 6. So our equation is going to be the 1 plus the remainder over x minus 6. That means that we are shifting to the right by 6, up by 1, and a vertical dilation by 6. So if we set up our table of values, and remember our table of values goes for our parent function of y is equal to 1 over x, and then we put in the expressions for our transformations. So we have 6y plus 1 and x plus 6. We take our original x values, we put them in our new expression for x. We take our original y values and we put in our new expression for y, and we get our new points. I'm going to put our asymptotes on first. So the first asymptote has been shifted to the right by 6. So it's going to be right here. X is equal to 6, and then up by 1. And then I'm going to plot my points of 5, negative 5, 2, 3, 4, and 7, 7. Then I'm just going to make my curve. And then I'm just going to make my curve. Now this question looks completely different, and we are not going to use long division. We're going to first identify our vertical and horizontal asymptotes, and there's some rules that we need to keep in mind when we do that. The first rule is when identifying our vertical asymptote, we're going to set the denominator equal to 0 and solve. So we're going to do that first, because remember, anytime we have a denominator equal to 0, our graph is undefined. So what we're doing is we're looking for the x values that creates our graph as undefined. So we take x squared plus 7x plus 12, and we're going to set it equal to 0. So in order to solve this, I'm going to factor. So I'm looking for numbers that multiply together to get 12 and add together to get 7. X plus 4 and x plus 3. So I set each one equal to 0 using the 0 product property, and we get x is equal to negative 4 and x is equal to negative 3. So notice that we actually have two different x vertical asymptotes here. So I'm going to plot those. And I'm going to label them. And then we're going to go and find our horizontal asymptotes. When identifying the horizontal asymptote, we need to evaluate the degree of the numerator and the denominator. Depending on how they relate to each other, it will give us information of the horizontal asymptote. So we have three different scenarios. The first scenario is when the degree in the numerator is larger than the degree in the denominator. and then we have no horizontal asymptote. When the degree in the numerator is smaller, then the horizontal asymptote will always be y is equal to 0. And the last one is if they're the same. The degree in the numerator is the same as the degree in the denominator. Then it is the leading coefficient of the numerator over the leading coefficient of the denominator. So if we look at our question here, we look at the degree. The degree in the numerator is 1, and the degree in the denominator is 2. So that means that we're looking at this second situation. So our horizontal asymptote is going to be y is equal to 0. So I'm going to plot that. So now I have my horizontal and my vertical asymptotes. Make sure you write a note on all these 3 different scenarios, because I'm going to erase them. Now, in order to figure out what this graph looks like, we have to identify our x and our y intercepts. So the rule is when we're finding our x-intercept, we set y is equal to 0 and solve. And when we're finding our y-intercept, we set x is equal to 0 and solve. And when we say x is equal to 0, we mean all the x's. So in the first, when we're in the first part, we're going to set y is equal to 0. So we get 0 is equal to 3x minus 2 over x squared plus 7x plus 12. When we cross multiply, our denominator is going to become 0. So essentially, when you are doing this, you're really just setting the numerator equal to 0 and solving. So we add 2 to each side. And we get x is equal to 2 over 3. So the coordinate is 2/3 and 0. I plot that. So that's going to be right around here. Then I'm going to set all my x's equal to 0 to solve for y. We end up getting -2 over 12, which is -1/6. So the coordinate is 0 and -1/6. Now, those are the 4 key features that we're going to use to eventually graph these. At this point in time, because I don't want to introduce too many new things at once, I want you to go to your graphing calculator and put the equation in your graphing calculator to finish the sketch of this graph.